Hare Krishna, nothing else. One tune, go.
Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Krishna, Srimad Bhagavatam, Swami Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Krishna, Bhutale, Srimad Bhagavatam, Swami Namine. Namaste Saraswati Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Satarine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Satarine. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jayadvaita Swami Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura-Govinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna
Haribol. Jai Om Vishnupad Punamhansa Padiprajaka Charja Stota Sri Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Nam Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadip Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Jamana Mai Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Pramanande.
Hari Hari Bol. Thank you so much, Maharaj, and thank you to your in-house Kirtan band. And welcome to everyone for Srimad Bhagavatam class with His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami. It is Monday, January 15th, 2024 in New York anyway. And we are reading in third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 27th chapter. And tonight we're starting with text number 15.
And just a word to the devotees here. We'll be having reading by different devotees online. And if you have questions or comments along the way, you can raise your hand or say something. And that's how we go. And we'll go for 1 hour. Okay.
Shall we proceed as we have, Maharaj? And I'll start off and you'll comment?
Yes, please.
Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So 3:27:15. Manyamanas tadatmanam anashto nashtavan risha. Nashte hankarane drashta, nashtavitta ivaturaha. Translation: the living entity can vividly feel his existence as the seer, but because of the disappearance of the ego during the state of deep sleep, he falsely takes himself to be lost, like a man who has lost his fortune and feels distressed, thinking himself to be lost. Srila Prabhupada's purport: only in ignorance does a living entity think that he is lost. If by attainment of knowledge he comes to the real position of his eternal existence, he knows that he is not lost. An appropriate example is mentioned here: Nashtavita ivaturaha. A person who has lost a great sum of money may think that he is lost, but actually he is not lost. Only his money is lost. But due to his absorption in the money or identification with the money, he thinks that he is lost. Similarly, when we falsely identify with matter as our field of activities, we think that we are lost, although actually we are not. As soon as a person is awakened to the pure knowledge of understanding that he is an eternal servitor of the Lord, his own real position is revived. A living entity can never be lost. When one forgets his identity in deep sleep, he becomes absorbed in dreams, and he may think himself a different person, or may think himself lost. But actually his identity is intact. This concept of being lost is due to false ego, and it continues as long as one is not awakened to the sense of his existence as an eternal servitor of the Lord. The Mayavadi philosopher's concept of becoming one with the Supreme Lord is another symptom of being lost in false ego. One may falsely claim that he is the Supreme Lord, but actually he is not. This is the last snare of Maya's influence upon the living entity. To think oneself equal with the Supreme Lord, or to think oneself to be the Supreme Lord himself, is also due to false ego. Om Jnana Timirantasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistang Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandehang Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalang Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitangscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanshakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanang Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Manyamanas tadatmanam anashto nashtavan risha naste hankarane drashta nashta vita ivaturaha. The living entity can vividly feel his existence as the seer, but because of the disappearance of the ego during the state of deep sleep, he falsely takes himself to be lost, like a man who has lost his fortune and feels distressed, thinking himself to be lost. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti has quite a bit to say on this verse and the preceding verse and the verse coming straight after. Hopefully we can get to some of that as class goes on. But here in this particular purport of Srila Prabhupada, he's focusing on this concept of the living entity feeling himself to be lost because of some reverse that he's experiencing in his either waking or sleeping life as a conditioned soul who's very much invested in his material existence. And the word invested can be teased out also because hearing that here the person who has lost a great sum of money may think that he is lost, but actually he is not lost. Only his money is lost. It makes one think of Black Friday in the United States when so many people lost so much money in the stock market and were literally jumping off of buildings or out of windows because they considered it the end. They were so invested in so many ways, and it was unbearable for them. And it's unbearable for a sleeping person to think that he may be lost, but it's actually just he's just dreaming. Srila Vishwanath talks about that, how interesting it is. In the verse, it says that because of the disappearance of the ego during the state of deep sleep, it's not so easy as that. The ego apparently disappears, but actually it's just we're covered by a sleeping condition. It's not that it's not so easy to become free from the false ego. But that's our position. We become so invested in our material identity that any little scratch we get, any little scratch, even our car gets, we think, oh no, there's so many oh no moments. But for the soul, there's neither birth nor death at any time. You can't be withered by the wind, burned by fire, moistened, etc., etc. Nothing bad can happen to the soul. But as long as we're absorbed in this material concept, so many bad things can and do happen to us. And we have so many oh no moments. We think all is lost. but all is not lost. And that's the position we're supposed to come to. And the key of that is, as long as one is not awakened to the sense of his existence as an eternal servitor of the Lord, that's how long the false ego lasts. If we can get beyond that, if we can get to the point where that's where we see ourselves as nothing but an eternal servant of the Lord, then the false ego is gone. There are no more oh no moments. It's only happiness, because we're who we are. We're not dreaming. We're not in illusion. We're not in a drugged, covered state of existence. He says here, actually, his identity is intact. And that point of being an eternal servitor is what we have to come to before we can go through life with this sense that our sense of identity is intact. This is so disturbing to people as they go through life and go through the stages of, youth, especially old age. They think that they're lost. They think that their whole life is lost. If they have to, let's say someone has to move into a nursing home or assisted living, and they have to empty out their house. They think that their whole life is lost because they've spent their life accumulating things that make them happy, that please them, that they want to impress other people with. And when all those things go away, they think, this is my life, and it's now all lost. We have practical experience of seeing this up close. But actually, our identity is intact once we see ourselves as an eternal servitor of the Lord. Hare Krishna. Maharaj, would you like to comment on this verse?
One thought here is that anashto nashtavan rasha, the materialist faces the prospect of his total destruction. Rasha, by illusion, he thinks that when the body is destroyed, he's destroyed. Everything is lost. Everything is lost when the body is destroyed. Anashtavan, although his identity is intact, hanyate hanyamane shirire, because he identifies with the body, he thinks that when the body is lost, that's it. Life is over. Everything's finished. So it's the bleakest of all possibilities that after this life is over, there's just nothing. Nashta. Nashtavan, one thinks everything, it's just over. I only have these few years in which to cram in sense gratification, and then it's over. So that illusion is there. And then if he finds that, then he finds a blissful alternative that he can become one with the Supreme. But then that's another illusion, because again, his individuality is lost. He's suffering in the material world, and he sees that at the end there's nothing. But now, no, here at the end there's something. But again, it's nothing, because there's no individuality. So again, Nashtavan, his individuality is not destroyed, but by illusion, he thinks that it will be destroyed, either with the result of nothingness, as in voidist philosophy or materialistic philosophy, or with the idea of oneness, in which case, again, my individuality is nashta. Yeah, that's it.
Would it be all right if we looked a little bit at Srila Vishwanath's purport to this?
Absolutely.
He makes some very, very, very nice statements here. He's saying that he who is without ahankar in the body, mind, and senses, when merged by sleep in pradhan, is so called because it is unmanifested, realizes the jiva And then, as he sometimes does, he poses an argument. Well, though one achieves destruction, the mind, intelligence, and senses by yoga practice, it is amazing that sleep alone can bring about this result of realizing Atma, which he then answers. It gets quite technically, describes the mechanics of attachment here. When ahankara and the results of ahankara, the sense objects, senses, mind, and intelligence, are destroyed by merging them into prakriti, the jiva, the drashta, the seer, thinking that these things have been destroyed since he cannot see them, falsely thinks that he also has been destroyed. The ignorant sleeping jiva is then compared to a person who has lost his wealth. However, the person does not lose his attachment to lost wealth, and therefore he grieves. So from hearing that, it clarifies it for me even further that the real problem, even for the attached materialist, is not even so much that the wealth in this case, in this instance, is lost, but that the attachment is still there. If he had no attachment for it, it wouldn't hurt him. It wouldn't give him pain if anything was destroyed. Elsie Priya has a comment or a question. Isn't thinking one is supreme the first snare of Maya's influence on the living entity? Or is the verse speaking in terms of someone who is pursuing transcendence, who erroneously believes himself as having attained that state as a result of austerities, meditation, etc., and that by that state, she means to say the supreme? So I could restate the question maybe. She's saying, isn't the idea of, and Prabhupada often presents Maya being the last snare of Maya is to think oneself the supreme. And she's saying, isn't it actually the first snare of Maya's influence? Or is this speaking in terms of someone pursuing transcendence, that they get to a certain state and they think, oh, I have achieved that state, that I am now supreme?
Generally, Prabhupada uses it in the context of transcendence. One becomes frustrated with material existence, and then he thinks, well, now here is spiritual realization. I become one with the Absolute. So then Maya gets him again.
Any other comments, questions from, oh, Saraswati Mata says, pranams. A conditional soul's constitutional identity is never extinguished or lost, but is forgotten since time immemorial due to the influence of Maya, which makes it lost almost permanently. Some people are so obsessed with sense gratification and controlling their enjoyment that they prefer to live in the virtual world, and still they are left unsatisfied but cannot break the addiction. Yes, thank you very much. Any further comments, Maharaj? Or would you like to move on? Tulsi Priya says, thank you, Maharaj. I was just asking because Prabhupada says that we fall into material consciousness because we envy Krishna and want to be his equal.
First, last, middle. Maya gets us coming and going.
Yeah. All right.
Just one more thing is that generally deep sleep is taken to be the state in which there's no dreams, no thoughts, no nothing. And so one may think that the Yeah. I don't know where I wanted to go with that. Well, let's see what Krishna says. In deep sleep, one is not aware of anything at all. Not so. One may say, I slept happily. I was not aware of anything. But without knowledge of particulars, without recollection of one's Atma, that statement could not even be uttered. That is expressed in verse 16. So again, that point that the soul is not lost, even if he's in deep sleep, he's still there. He's still there. Or even if he's merged in Prakriti at the time of devastation, that doesn't destroy his individuality. And therefore he comes out again at the time of creation. It's not that just he goes to sleep for thousands and thousands of years, his individuality is lost. It's even after thousands and thousands of years, it's still there. Okay.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, there's a question there. Oh, question here. Yes.
One reason we experience pain is because suffering is because we feel we are attached.
We feel suffering because we're attached. Yeah.
Which is an illusion, because we are not, when death happens, we are not losing anything. Our individuality is still there.
It's illusion because if death comes, we're not really losing anything, right?
But in another way, if we see, there is a lot of pain that we experience because of body, which seems to be real.
But there's a lot of pain we experience from the body which appears to be real.
So that experience of suffering seems to be justified because there is pain in the body.
Seems to be justified. I like that because there's pain in the body. I like that seems. Actually, we have nothing to do with the pleasure and pain of the body. It seems to be, what is that pleasure? It appears to be pain. Agama payano nityas. Shitoshna sukha. It appears to be pleasure, it appears to be pain. Actually, it has nothing to do with me. And therefore, the yogis who attain a certain state of consciousness are not affected even by pleasures and pain or heat and cold, or anyone, we have different pain thresholds, they say. So someone is just a little bit of pain, ooh, 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 ooh. He's upset, he's like, ooh, 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 ooh. And someone else is more tolerant, hardly gives it a thought. And someone is still more tolerant, like the yogis. They can be sitting in the midst of a ring of fire with the sun beating down overhead, and they'll also be tolerant. So actually it has nothing to do with me, but because I'm connected with this body and I identify with this body, the things that happen to this body appear to me to be happening to me. And pain and pleasure appear to be something that is very substantial, the pain and pleasure of this body. The pain is not substantial, the pleasure is also not. People immerse themselves, no. Matras prashastu kanti, it's only because of a combination of senses and sense objects, which actually, at the end, have nothing really to do with me. But I'm investing in them, as Kendra said. I'm identifying with them. Is that okay? You saw, therefore, Prabhupada, he'd be in quite ill health, but he'd carry on, he just wouldn't give that much attention to it because he was focused on the platform of Krishna consciousness. And the materialist, as soon as something's, as soon as he has a sniffle, he's off to the doctor to do something because it's so troublesome. Okay. Want to carry on, Kendra?
Sure, Marsh, thank you. Tulsi Priya says that medically, some people are in a, quote, vegetative state in which they are alive, but not at all engaged with the world on any level, completely inert, or are they just deeply in the mode of ignorance?
Yeah, as far as I understand, the machinery is not working, so there's a kind of disconnect there. Now, what they're connected with is another story. The materialists, well, someone's in a coma, so where they are exactly, according to the modes of nature. But I remember an incident. My god sister Velocity was in hospice, and it was reported that she was in coma. And so all the devotees went there, and she was in coma. But as soon as the devotees came and started chanting, she was out of coma and asking for her bead bag. So as long as there was nothing of interest in this material world, she was in a coma. And as soon as Krishna consciousness was there, now there's something to be, something external that's worth it. So it's very interesting what may happen in this coma.
Priyanka asks, how can we increase our absorption in the sat and not get detached from sat so we don't identify with this body?
Chant Hare Krishna. Always. And then be engaged in devotional service. That's practical absorption in sat. The meditators try to absorb themselves in sat by aham brahmasmi, by some process, but which is difficult and troublesome. But the devotees engage themselves in the service of the Supreme Sat, and therefore they're on the Sat platform. Practical activity.
I found one more statement in Srila Vishwanath's purport that I thought I'd share before we move on, if that's all right. He's speaking about the phenomenon of someone losing their wealth and then thinking that all is lost. He says, when a treasure is lost, there can be no bliss in such poverty, but there can be happiness if the person loses his attraction for wealth. So if that's all for 15, we can move on to 16. Tulsi Priya, are you available and willing to read text 16?
Yes, one moment. Text 16.
Correct.
Okay. Evam pratyavamrishyasa evam pratyavamrishyava skip it. Atmanam pratipadyate sahankarasya dravyasya yovastanam anugraha. Translation: when by mature understanding one can realize his individuality, then the situation he accepts under false ego becomes manifest to him. Purport: the Mayavadi philosopher's position is that at the ultimate issue, the individual is lost, everything becomes one, and there is no distinction between the knower, the knowable, and knowledge. But by minute analysis, we can see that this is not correct. Individuality is never lost, even when one thinks that the three different principles, namely the knower, the knowable, and knowledge, are amalgamated or merged into one. The very concept that the three merge into one is another form of knowledge, and since the perceiver of the knowledge still exists, how can one say that the knower, knowledge, and knowable have become one? The individual soul who is perceiving this knowledge still remains an individual. Both in material existence and in spiritual existence, the individuality continues. The only difference is in the quality of the identity. In the material identity, the false ego acts, and because of false identification, one takes things to be different from what they actually are. That is the basic principle of conditional life. Similarly, when the false ego is purified, one takes everything in the right perspective. That is the state of liberation. It is stated in the Ishopanishad that everything belongs to the Lord. Ishavasyam idam sarvam. Everything exists on the energy of the Supreme Lord. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Because everything is produced of his energy and exists on his energy, the energy is not different from him, but still the Lord declares, I am not there. When one clearly understands one's constitutional position, everything becomes manifest. False egoistic acceptance of things conditions one, whereas acceptance of things as they are makes one liberated. The example given in the previous verse is applicable here. Due to absorption of one's identity in his money, when the money is lost, he thinks that he is also lost. But actually, he is not identical with the money, nor does the money belong to him. When the actual situation is revealed, we understand that the money does not belong to any individual person or living entity, nor is it produced by man. Ultimately, the money is the property of the Supreme Lord, and there is no question of its being lost. But as long as one falsely thinks, I am the enjoyer, or I am the Lord, this concept of life continues, and one remains conditioned. As soon as this false ego is eliminated, one is liberated. As confirmed in the Bhagavatam, situation in one's real constitutional position is called mukti, or liberation. So, this idea of no distinction between the knower, the knowable, and knowledge, that's a weighty philosophical question, and Prabhupada dissects it very nicely, and disarms it as well, because it's tantalizing if you have, if your mental philosophical this idea of knower, knowable, and knowledge becoming amalgamated is tantalizing, and we want to it's attractive to people who are geared that way. I was telling my husband today, my mother used to call me Little Miss Know-It-All because I was always looking things up and things like that. And I said, no, I was Little Miss Want to Know It All, but of course I never did know it all, not even close. And so, but I think that that's probably responsible for a lot of the frustration that people who are in philosophical studies experience. I had a friend once who was a philosopher, a college philosopher, and we would discuss, different things, and he said all the good philosophers commit suicide, and that's very it's similar to what Prabhupada talks about. The monist wants to commit spiritual suicide. Because really the only way that you can know everything or kid yourself that you know everything is to merge, and then you have the illusion that you become one with everything, and so then you contain everything within you, because really you don't disappear, so you're thinking you're everything. But that's not how it works. You falsely think you're one with everything, and then you get bored or lonely, and back down you come to the material world to do something different. Prabhupada also says here that he quotes from Upanishad, everything belongs to the Lord. And that's the proper understanding. It's not that everything just exists in a free form somewhere outside of us, and by tapasya and mental speculation, we can grasp it within our tiny capacity. If we understand that everything is owned by the Lord, then it becomes evident immediately that we can't grasp it. It's not possible, because everything is everything, and we're very tiny. So the only person who can grasp everything is the person who's created everything and who is the source of everything, and that's the Lord. So really it's a matter of humility, which is, the currency of the devotees. That's what the devotees' real wealth is their humility, because you understand things as they are. You are tiny, you are subordinate, and you're always under control of superior forces. But when you surrender to the Lord, it's like the difference between a dog who's wild in the street, running in the street and has no master, and a dog who has a master. A dog that's running in the street is welcome nowhere, but a dog on a leash under the control of the master can go anywhere that the master goes. And if the master owns everything and controls everything, then the dog can also go everywhere and enjoy everything in the company of the master. But you have to have the proper mentality and have a service mentality and understand that you're only a servant and you're not in control. All right, Krishna.
Thank you so much. Maharaj, could you kindly comment on this verse also?
Yeah, I like this point that Prabhupada makes, that you want to amalgamate knower, object of knowledge, and knowledge itself. But as long as you know about that, you're not there. I had a relative who was pursuing Buddhism semi-seriously, and he remarked on the difficulty of the practice, because the ego keeps reasserting itself. The ego keeps reasserting itself. In Buddhism, you'd like to get free from this false ego, which is the only kind of ego there is in Buddhist thought. You want to get free from that false sense that I'm an individual, but it's very hard to in fact, impossible to get rid of it. It keeps coming back. You're meditating, I have to get free from false ego, but you're there. So here it's practical, that Itvanyata Rupam, we get free from the false ego, but Svarupena Vyavastiti. We're situated in our real identity. Otherwise, all these Nirvishesha Shunyavadi, it's all impractical, it's all theoretical. It doesn't really, even if you attain success in it, that's still a Ruya Kristrena. Again, we fall down because it's not really sustainable, not constitutional, it's not our nature, and therefore ultimately it's unsustainable. As my relative said, the ego keeps coming back. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur someplace says that the impersonalist holds his ego in abeyance. He holds his ego in abeyance, which means it's there, but he's sort of holding it in check, suppressing it, or trying to keep it out of the picture. But holding it, it keeps coming back.
Saraswati Mata says, some Mayavadis claim you are an eternal spark that has fallen in Maya, but once you become free from Maya, then the spark merges or integrates with the other sparks, ultimately to become the one unlimited supreme spark. Also, they could argue that the knower of any knowledge exists only while in Maya, but ultimately there is no differentiation of the knower, knowledge, and the knowable.
How do you know? The spark merges, but then sparks unmerge, they fall. There's fire and there's sparks. You can't make it that everything's one. Even in fire, there's smoke, there's firewood, there's sparks. Not that everything is only one. Knowledge exists only when we're in Maya. Then there's no differentiation. How do you know there's no differentiation? Who's come back and told us?
I like how you say that's theoretical and impractical.
Pleasure dictator station it's troublesome.
Regarding the idea of holding the ego in abeyance, Tulsi Priya asks, you can only hold it for so long before something's got to give. Also, who is holding the ego back?
Yeah.
I wanted to read one statement from the last part of Srila Vishwanath's purport that I like very much here. He says that this is at the end of his purport for all these verses. He says that after taking shelter of the jiva, the ahankara, body, senses, mind, and intelligence begin to enjoy the sense objects. The jiva is favored by the Lord because he is given the quality of being an enjoyer like the Lord. That's reminds me of a discussion that we had recently on this point, that the Lord favors the jiva by giving him the quality of being an enjoyer. But in the material sphere, that quality gives no satisfaction to the soul, because all he's enjoying is matter, which is not enjoyable ultimately, or even for very long or very much. Priyanka Mataji says, thank you, Maharaj. Maharaj, sometimes we see, even after chanting and being engaged in various services, the absorption is until the time chanting is going on or the service is going on. And as soon as we are out in the material world, absorption in external activities becomes more. What steps can we take to be in the satat yuktanam consciousness?
Practice association. By practice, abhyasena to kontya narakena. Practice detachment, and again association of devotees. What is that? Yito nischalati stastato niyam yaitadatmanyeva vashamne. That's practice. Mind may wander here and there, but we have to bring it back to Krishna consciousness.
Any other comments or questions on text 16? That's the end of a segment of Lord Kapila speaking, and next we hear from Devahuti Mata. We have some time. Panchatattva Prabhu, would you be able to read text 17?
Sure. I've also been reading this book, Life and Teachings of the Four Acharyas, by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. It's presented by some devotees. And there's the Acharya Vishnu Swami coming in the Sampradaya established by Lord Shiva. He has some nice things to say about the spark and the fire. In one place he says, although the living, it quotes his Sanskrit, although the living, individual living entities are parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, his plenary portions, such as Matsya, are not like the individual living entities. For example, the sun is fire, and a spark is also fire, but there's a gulf of difference between the two. Another example is that although honey and wine are both liquids, there is a gulf of difference between the two. Similarly, although the individual living entities and the Matsya incarnation are both expansions of the Supreme Lord, there is a great difference between them. Then later on he says, as sparks from the fire are also fire because they have the same quality, heat and light, the living entities are also Brahman because they have the same qualities, or quality, Satchidananda. Although both a great fire and its sparks are both fire, and thus share the qualities of heat and light, the distress caused by cold can only be alleviated by the fire and not by the sparks. Similarly, although the Supreme Brahman and the individual living entities are one in quality, the Supreme Brahman is the complete whole, whereas the minute individual living entities are parts and parcels of the complete whole and not the complete whole themselves. That's kind of nice. Text 17. Devahutirvacha Purusham Prakrtir Brahman Navimunchati Karhichit Anyanya Pashrayatvacha Nityatvad Anayo Prabho. Sri Devahuti inquired, my dear Brahmana, does material nature ever give release to the spirit soul? Since one is attracted to the other eternally, how is their separation possible? Purport. Devahuti, the mother of Kapila-dev, here makes her first inquiry. Although one may understand that spirit, soul, and matter are different, their actual separation is not possible, either by philosophical speculation or by proper understanding. The spirit soul is the marginal potency of the Supreme Lord, and matter is the external potency of the Lord. The two eternal potencies have somehow or other been combined. And since it is so difficult to separate one from the other, how is it possible for the individual soul to become liberated? By practical experience, one can see that when the soul is separated from the body has no real existence. And when the body is separated from the soul, one cannot perceive the existence of the soul. As long as the soul and the body are combined, we can understand that there is life. But when they are separated, there is no manifested existence of the body or the soul. This question asked by Devahuti of Kapila-dev is more or less impelled by the philosophy of Voidism. The Voidists say that consciousness is a product of a combination of matter, and as soon as the consciousness is gone, the material combination dissolves, and therefore there is ultimately nothing but voidness. This absence of consciousness is called nirvana in Mayavad philosophy. So this is Devahuti's first inquiry. She's heard for quite some time. We have not heard Devahuti speak since the beginning of the 25th chapter. So she's been listening quite intently, and this is her first question. It's interesting that both Buddhism and Mayavad philosophy are mentioned basically here by Srila Prabhupada as synonymous. This absence of consciousness is called nirvana in Mayavad philosophy. Nirvana is accepted in Buddhism as the ultimate state of, I hesitate to say existence, but the goal, let's say. But to say it's the ultimate state of existence would be incorrect, because their conception is that you want to get rid of your existence, which is a very strange, and if one was really thinking deeply about it, fearful conception. It's the thing that makes the death such a fearful idea, because no one wants to be snuffed out of existence. But on the basis of observing externally the body and the activities of the soul within the body, one is not understanding through self-realization that I'm spirit soul, I'm not this body, I'm eternal, then one comes to this conclusion that at the point of death, the body no longer exists as an active thing, and the living entity, or that which is a source of consciousness within the body, no longer exists. It comes into being and goes out of being. It's part of Krishna's argument to Arjuna. Even if you accept that this is the ultimate outcome, we still, why are you lamenting? Why are you so concerned? So, so like that, this philosophy has actually become quite prevalent in the world. And it's also a product of attachment, because we are taking this external body and what to speak of our attachments to this body, our expansive attachments, as being part and parcel of our identity, when indeed they have nothing to do with us. It's quite a revolutionary philosophy in the West. And oftentimes a person's first reaction is to just kind of throw it away or discard it, because it turns things completely on the head, so to speak. It's so opposite to a person's conception. But if one has the opportunity, by the mercy of the pure devotee, to patiently hear, as Devahuti is hearing from her spiritual master Kapila, her son, then one can begin to understand. And that is being explained here. Hare Krishna.
Jai Prabhu, thank you so very much. Maharaj, is there something you would like to say on this?
Just that Prabhupada sometimes says that at the present moment, we're a combination of matter and spirit. We're spirit, but we're so enmeshed in mayas, in material bodies, so stuck to the material body by nature's arrangement, that at the present moment we're a combination of matter and spirit. So the question is pertinent. Well, how do you separate the two strands? Does matter ever let go of spirit? Or can spirit ever get free from matter? That's the pertinent question that she's raising.
Murai Gupta Prabhu says, I think in regard to Buddhism, Prabhupada says that if it's all one, there is nothing to be known, because knowledge means there is knowledge and the knower. If either one is missing, then knowledge can't exist to be taught. So there's no need to speak on it. He says it seems like a polite way of telling voidists to shut up.
They have slightly different positions, the voidists and the impersonalists. The impersonalists are after absolute knowledge, or oneness of the knower and the knowledge and the object of knowledge. Buddhists, they just want out of the whole thing. They no knower, no object of knower, no nothing.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Maharaj. We have reached our ultimate time for today's class. Is there a kirtan band still there on site?
Yeah, the band's still here. Kirtan, a few more minutes.
Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paripradrakacharya Stotu Sri Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Raj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Nama Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sakaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadip Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Ki Jai Gangamai Ki Jai Ramanamai Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande. Hari Bol.
Hari Hari Bol. Thank you so much, Maharaj, for leading us in class, and thank you to your on-site kirtan band and all the devotees there. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami Maharaj ki jai.
Samaveta Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai.
Jai.
Gaur Premanande.
Haribol. Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. Thank you,
Thank you,
Krishna.
Guru Maharaj.
Thank you, Madhupati. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Hope to see you again on Wednesday. Thank you. Hare Krishna.